Picture a Saturday morning in the early 1990s. Millions of Americans, coffee in hand, settled in front of a television not for a game show, not for cartoons, but to watch a quiet man in a plaid shirt explain the difference between a through tenon and a blind tenon. And they stayed. Every week. For years. That was the strange, unlikely power of Norm Abram. He wasn't loud, he didn't sell drama, he just showed up, put on his safety glasses, and built something extraordinary from a pile of raw wood. At his peak, the new Yankee Workshop was drawing 4 million viewers a week on public television, without a network budget, without celebrity guests, without a single manufactured controversy. And then one day, when the money was still there and the audience was still watching, Norm Abram made a decision that stopped the industry cold. He walked away, on his own terms, at the height of it all. Understanding why requires going all the way back to the beginning. To a backyard in suburban Boston, a scrap pile, and a chance meeting that neither man knew would reshape American television. Norm Abram grew up in Milford, Massachusetts, the son of a carpenter. Not a famous one, just a working tradesman who knew his craft and passed it to his son the old-fashioned way, by putting him to work. Norm was 9 years old the first time he worked a paying job site, helping his father install hardwood floors for a client. He wasn't watching from the corner, he was working. That kind of early immersion in skilled physical labor shapes a person's relationship with quality in a way that's almost impossible to undo. The standard gets set when you're young, and you spend the rest of your life trying to meet it. He went to the University of Massachusetts Amherst after high school, initially trying mechanical engineering. It didn't take. The theoretical side left him cold. He needed to make things, not just calculate them. He switched to business administration, graduated, and took a position with a large New England construction firm. 3 years later, he was already a site supervisor. But working within someone else's operation was never the final destination. In 1976, Norm founded his own general contracting firm, Integrated Structures, Inc. His first major independent project was a general store on Nantucket. He was 26 years old, building for real clients, operating to his own standard. By 1979, he had been running the company for 3 years when a routine job came in, a barn and workshop build in a suburban Boston backyard for a private client named Russell Morash. What Morash did for a living was produce television. What he noticed about Norm wasn't charisma or screen presence. It was the scrap pile. Barely a pile at all, really. Just a handful of offcuts from a carpenter who wasted nothing and measured everything twice before he cut once. Morash recognized that kind of precision immediately because he'd spent years watching Julia Child work the same way in a kitchen. He invited Norm to come along on a renovation job in Dorchester that was being filmed for a new PBS series. Norm said yes, showed up, and did his job. The show was This Old House. It premiered in 1979 and found an audience almost immediately. Norm was the master carpenter, not the host, not the face in the promotional material, but the person viewers actually trusted to know what was happening with the building. He continued running his contracting firm until 1989. Television, for a decade, was something he did alongside his real work. In 1988, Russell Morash started developing a new concept, something more focused, more intimate than This Old House. No renovation chaos, no homeowners with changing minds, no timelines blown by unexpected structural problems. Just one person in a workshop, building something, start to finish, with total control over every step. The show was designed around Norm from the beginning. The new Yankee Workshop launched in 1989, and the format was almost defiantly simple. Norm walked in, put on his safety glasses. He began every single episode with a reminder about eye protection. And then he built. Furniture, mostly. Chairs, cabinets, beds, outdoor pieces, and faithful reproductions of antique American classics. The kind of work that rewards patience and punishes shortcuts. Each episode aired in around 22 minutes. What most viewers didn't realize was that every project shown in those 22 minutes could represent 60 hours or more of actual construction and preparation. Every joint, every fit, every finish, Norm did all of it himself. The camera was simply there to document the process. Over the show's run, he completed at least 235 distinct projects. Not demonstrations, not approximations, completed, refined, finished pieces. The audience that found the show was loyal in a way that's rare even by public television standards. The show ran through 21 seasons from 1989 to 2009, and the community it built among woodworkers and aspiring craftspeople ran deep. People didn't just watch Norm, they learned from him. They built the projects themselves, ordered the plans, failed, tried again, and came back the following week for the next one. And through all of it, Norm remained exactly the same. Calm, measured, methodical. The plaid shirts became legendary. The safety glasses became a running trademark. His almost ritual opening line, "Be sure to wear these," became the verbal equivalent of a theme song. Nothing about him was performed. It was just who he was. Then came October 16th, 2009. WGBH Boston issued a press release. No further episodes of the new Yankee Workshop would be produced. For fans who had been watching closely, there had been a signal, a quiet one, but unmistakable in hindsight. The show's final season, season 21, contained no new builds at all. Every episode was a rebroadcast pulled from seasons 9 and 10, each one opened by a newly filmed introduction from Norm in the workshop. He stood there, warm and steady as always, welcomed viewers back, and then handed them the past. He was saying goodbye over the course of an entire season without ever using that word. The announcement hit harder because there was no crisis to point to. No budget collapse, no network pulling the plug, no scandal forcing a shutdown. Norm himself confirmed it clearly. The show had been fully funded through underwriting its entire run and could have continued. The money was there, the audience was there, nobody forced anything. Norm chose to stop. His explanation was direct. He had accomplished everything he had set out to accomplish. He wanted time with his family. He wanted to build for himself rather than for a camera. His producer put it even more plainly when asked about finding a replacement. There wasn't one. There was never going to be one. The show and the man were the same thing, and when one walked out the door, the other was over. That kind of exit is almost non-existent in television. It requires both the ability to leave and the willingness to actually do it. And most people who get to the point where they have the ability have also acquired enough attachment to what they built that the willingness disappears. Norm didn't have that problem. He had a standard, and once he felt he'd met it, the case for continuing wasn't strong enough. He went home and the lights in that workshop went dark. The private life Norm was returning to was one he'd built with the same care he put into everything else. His first marriage, to a woman named Laura Cohn, ended in divorce in 1996. They had a daughter together, Lindsay. Norm was characteristically quiet about the personal details. He never turned his private life into content, and he didn't start now. In 1999, he married Elise Hallenstein, a skilled potter. There's something fitting in that pairing. Two people who work with their hands, who understand that making something well takes time and cannot be rushed. They settled in Carlisle, Massachusetts, in a timber-frame colonial home that Norm had designed and built himself, with help from his father and other professionals. He wrote an entire book about the experience, Norm Abram's New House, published in 1995, documenting every decision from foundation to roofline. That house isn't a showpiece, it's a home. The distinction matters. Norm built things to last, to be used, to be lived in. That was always the difference between him and the television version of home improvement that came after, shows built on reveals and reactions and dramatic before and after moments. Norm's work was about the process and what you understood by going through it properly. After the new Yankee Workshop ended, he remained on This Old House for another 13 years. A reduced role but a sustained presence. He wasn't gone, he was just no longer carrying an entire show on his own. And in his personal life, a new project was taking shape. He and Elise had purchased a coastal property in Rhode Island, an old house near the water that needed renovation. Norm's plan for the new workshop on that property was characteristically thoughtful. Walls built from insulating concrete forms, a roof from structural insulated panels. Not the most conventional choice, but optimized for energy efficiency. Exactly the kind of decision a man makes when he's building something for himself and doesn't have to explain it to a producer. Beyond the workshop, he had a new ambition forming. He wanted to build a boat, specifically a Hershoff sloop, a classic New England sailboat design. He talked about attending a boat building school in New England first to acquire the right skills. The man who had spent decades teaching millions of people how to build was going back to being a student. In May 2022, the second announcement came. After 43 years as master carpenter on This Old House, over 1,000 episodes, more than 50 complete home renovation projects, Norm Abram was retiring fully. The statement from the show was warm and extensive. Norm's own words to the Boston Globe were not. He said he thought he'd done everything he could do on television. He said it was time. That October, PBS aired a one-hour tribute special called The House That Norm Built. It aired on October 3rd, his 73rd birthday. The special brought together colleagues and friends to trace 4 decades of work through archival footage and interviews. That same year, the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences recognized This Old House with the Lifetime Achievement Award at the Daytime Emmys. Dan Surratt, vice president of This Old House, said Norm was a living legend who had helped create the home improvement television genre. That entire networks now existed because of what he had built with viewers over those decades. That's not an exaggeration. The HGTV model, the DIY channel, the entire genre of how-to renovation television traces a direct line back to a quiet man who showed up to a PBS renovation shoot in 1979 because somebody noticed how small his scrap pile was, but Norm stepped away from all of it. No social media presence, no YouTube channel, no continued public profile. He closed the door the same way he always did at the end of a project, carefully, without drama, and with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had finished what he started. There's a phrase Norm used constantly throughout his career. Measure twice, cut once. It meant, think before you commit. Don't rush. Do the preparation before you do the work, because once the cut is made, you can't uncut it. Most people understand that as advice about woodworking. But looking at the arc of Norm's career, the choices he made, the timing of his exits, the way he built his private life with the same deliberateness he brought to everything else, it's hard not to see the philosophy applied far beyond a workbench. He didn't leave the new Yankee Workshop because something went wrong. He left because he had thought it through and the measurement was complete. Same thing 13 years later with This Old House. In both cases, the decision surprised an industry trained to see people hold on until they're pushed. Norm's pattern was different. He figured out what he wanted to build, he built it fully, and when it was done, he stopped. That kind of clarity doesn't come from a career. It comes from something deeper. From a father who put a 9-year-old to work on a real job site. From a standard set early and maintained for 60 years. From the knowledge that a piece done right doesn't need anything added to it. Somewhere on the coast of Rhode Island, there's a workshop being built. And inside it, eventually, there will be a Herreshoff sloop taking shape, plank by plank on the floor. Nobody's filming it. Nobody's watching. And that might be exactly the point.